Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Just the Sip, Tongasmic Wine Exploration Adventure. With me, your hostess, Norma, and I have Lauren King with me, our expert who is going to teach all of us novices what we need to know about Washington wines and specifically Chateau Ste. Michelle. So hang in there. We'll be right back. Hey there, and welcome back to Just the Sip. I'm Norma, and I've got Lauren with me, and we are going to talk about Chateau Ste. Michelle, Washington State wines today. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
At your winery.
I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for coming.
Oh my goodness, I couldn't pass this up when you agreed to do it.
Cheers to that.
Cheers. So,
Yeah,
nice. It's not too early.
It's never.
Tell me a little bit about yourself, Lauren. How did you decide, like one day, I love wine so much that I'm going to become a wine educator for probably one of the premier wineries that we have in the state?
Yeah, well, it goes back quite a bit to my love for the culinary arts.
Ooh.
I think a lot of people have probably come to wine through like the restaurant industry.
Sure.
I'm sort of in that realm too. I didn't know what I wanted to be after high school. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I always found myself in the kitchen baking. So I ended up going to culinary school for a year.
Okay.
But out on the East Coast, I'm originally from California. So most people think I got into wine because I'm from the Bay Area and near wine and vines. But my love started in New York, actually. So I went to culinary school for a year, but realized that that was a passion, but not a career. And so I ended up going to Cornell University for hospitality management. Thought I would still be on the F&B side, but more front of house. And my love for wine started. I started working at one of the restaurants on campus, which had a great wine list. And I still remember like the first time I was ever asked about wine in general. My mom and dad had always grown up just Chardonnay and Cabernet, and that's all I really knew. But my restaurant manager at the time gave me a glass of wine and said, what do you think this smells like? I was like, I don't know, grapes. That was the first time that I'd ever, and she was like, you're not wrong. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. Like, someone to tell me that I'm not wrong. Technically, I'm not. And then ended up taking a course called Intro to Wines at the hotel school that I was a part of. 700-person lecture. It's one of the largest classes on campus. I think the largest class on campus. Also the most failed, which is hilarious because most people are taking it for fun on a Wednesday afternoon. But I fell in love. My professor, we are still in contact today. I actually got to go back and be a presenter for that class just a couple months ago. It was like full circle moment.
So you did?
I did.
Oh,
yeah,
fantastic.
back in March. Yeah. So I got to do an overview of Washington and Oregon wines, and it was so much fun to go back there and do that and just have that full circle moment. But so I just fell in love with learning about kind of the art, the history, the culture. It made the world a lot smaller. Say like 80% of my global travels have been because of wine. And so when I graduated, I was like, I think that this is the industry. I mean, I found myself after graduation, I didn't go right into wine, but I was at Bevmo or Total Wine every weekend or going to any tasting I could, making cocktails at home, like just the beverage world. So eventually realized my love for wine and was looking to get back into it and had a great opportunity to work with a company I was with before this as a wine ambassador. And it just seemed like my dream job. They sent us to Australia, Spain, and Sonoma for 4 months to learn and train and study wine. And I'd already been studying it in college when I found out I was into it. But then that just kind of exponentially grew my love and passion for wine, to see the places, to be there, to meet the winemakers, and found myself just, that was my job when I got back to the States, was training, educating people on our brands. And that's what landed me at Chateau Ste. Michelle. I'm a West Coaster at heart, came back here and was looking for a job that I could continue to get paid to just talk about wine. And luckily,
That's what I'm doing.
yeah, exactly.
When I get paid.
So
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Exactly. Do that. So then I was looking for a way to just continue talking and training, educating people about the beauty of wine, whether it's Washington or anywhere else. I just fell in love with it and talking about it.
That's amazing. So how long have you been doing this then?
So I've been with St. Michelle for just about 3 years.
Right.
But I've been in kind of like an educator role since probably 2018 at this point. Yeah, so about 6 years.
Fantastic. So if somebody wanted to get into the wine industry and wanted to become a wine educator, there's so many facets of the wine industry. What would you recommend? What paths should they take? I love the culinary because you really have to use your senses.
Yeah.
For that.
I did love that part of it where it was like, okay, wine, I may not be a winemaker, but it's very formulaic,
Right.
but it's also artistry. So
Yes.
it's kind of things like baking.
Art and science. Yes.
I'd say the biggest thing I could have done for myself was just continue my studies after college. I think that that's something I consistently strive for. I don't like to sit still, but I need something to strive for. I'm not going to read a book unless I have an exam to take.
Yeah.
So I continued through both the Court of Master Sommeliers as well as the WSET program. Just finished my diploma.
Congrats.
A couple months ago. Thank you.
Yeah.
Finally got my certificate in the mail.
Yeah.
So things like that, where if you're interested in wine and aren't sure, there's really a great set of different organizations that want to help you with that, right? You don't have to go and pay for a college degree, So looking at the court or the WSET program or CSW programs or whatever it happens to be was a great first step for
Entry
anyone
level.
who's interested. Yeah. And they have it from level 1, which is, what is Riesling, to all the other things that come with
The nuances.
the nuances inside of it. So it's a great kind of like ladder way to get, even if you're geeky enough like we are, to continue that growth. So,
So tell me now a little bit specifically about Chateau Saint Michelle. I looked online, 1912. Do I have that right?
Yeah, yes and
You're
no.
the educator.
You're right.
So you
We
did
go
it.
back prior to Prohibition,
Okay.
but really we like to root ourselves and we say we're the founding winery of Washington because right after Prohibition ended in 1933, literally that day, December 5th, 1933, at 9:02 a.m., our earliest founders were actually in line to file articles of incorporation as a winery. And at the time, it was called National Wine Co.
Mhm.
And we weren't making the same kinds of wines we were making today, right? Everyone in the States at that time was kind of making some interesting wines. Questionable wines. But that really rooted us as the foundation for Chateau Saint Michelle. We eventually merged with another company to become larger. We were making wines in South downtown Seattle. And we realized over the time, and with California's growth as well, that people, they weren't drinking a lot of domestic wines, but eventually they did start drinking domestic wines after the Judgment of Paris, and things like that. People started to.
That was the 70s.
That was the 70s. So it took a long time.
Yeah.
We were making lots of wine up until then, but the quality just wasn't great. It's interesting because even just about in the mid 60s or so, there was only 4 wineries in Washington State.
Wow.
And there were a lot more prior. Then the quality started to decrease. Not as many wineries. We were still around. But you see after the Judgment of Paris and prior to the 60s, 70s, people were starting to actually grow proper wine grapes. You see the European varieties. This is when Chateau Saint Michelle started working with the famed Andrei Chelychev, as well as Walter Clore, who's kind of the godfather of Washington winemaking. And they worked together to find where the best plots really were in Washington to grow grapes. And that's when we were involved with them, Andrei Chelychev, along Saint Michelle and Walter Clore, and we started planting some of the first vineyards with quality vinifera grape varieties here. So your Cabernets, your Chardonnays, Sauvignon Blancs. In 1973 is when we first planted our Cold Creek vineyard. And so we have 3 estate vineyards that we've eventually come to plant, but that was really kind of the antithesis of quality winemaking in Washington, was when we started realizing, okay, for us to get people to drink our wine, we need to have higher quality. They love Bordeaux, they love Burgundy, they love all the imports. How do we get them to drink domestic? It's kind of where the name Chateau Saint Michelle came from. People loving the French vibes. We have an actual chateau here. But then
Does anyone live there?
no one lives there, but we work in there.
Okay. Cool office.
Yeah, it is a cool office. It's very retro.
And for
But it's
people
cool.
outside of the state, where are those vineyards located?
Yes, great question. Because I think, and not only I had this question just last week with someone who imports our wines to a different country. They come to Seattle and they go, you don't grow grapes here. Correct. 99% of our grapes are grown on the other side of the Cascades. We call it Eastern Washington.
Okay.
And majority inside of the super AVA called Columbia Valley.
Okay.
And within that, we have 20 AVAs total in Washington. So 18 smaller AVAs within the Columbia Valley super AVA.
Wow.
We also technically are in an AVA right now. It's called the Puget Sound AVA. So we do grow some grapes here. You saw them coming in. There's some hardy grapes out there, like Muller Turgau and such. So we do grow a few grapes over here. But yeah, 99% is from Eastern Washington, and we can get into why that is, if you'd like, because it's very special.
I am curious, though, about, I think most people are familiar with California, and I feel like they kind of started it with the missionaries coming and planting it. That's my background being in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
So one day somebody just decided, hey, I think this climate and this soil is suitable for grapes. Do you have any background on that? Yeah.
So it does kind of follow somewhat, not the missionaries, but we had a lot of immigrants coming to Washington. We had a lot of Germans, we had a lot of Italians, and a lot of them bringing with them pieces of their homeland. And there wasn't enough grapes out here. And of course, that was a huge part of their diet. And so they were bringing with them, what do they call them? Like boot vines. They shove them in their boots.
To keep them alive?
To sneak them in. I don't know if I guess that's probably not such a thing anymore. Back then it probably didn't matter. Today it's like, more biohazard stuff.
Sure.
But so
to get them through customs.
Yeah, exactly. So they started planting those European varieties and then realized that maybe not west of the Cascades, but east of the Cascades, the soils that we have out there, they're very sandy soils. They're very resistant to a lot of diseases. We don't really have phylloxera here in Washington, which is incredible. A lot of vines are on their own rootstocks.
Wow.
Yeah, our Cold Creek vineyard is still all on our own rootstocks. I will say, as people replant, just for safety, they will probably go onto rootstock, but there's a lot of old vines here because we have this really thick layer of like volcanic basalt under as our bedrock here due to all of the volcanic activity. And then on top of that, there was a phenomenon called the Missoula floods here as well. It was like 15,000 years ago. Massive floods from the end of the last ice age kind of carved out essentially the whole eastern half of the state, which is why it is it's a low desert, it's a valley, and it's got these beautiful rolling hills, but a lot of sediment and sand from that activity.
So, and minerality, I think.
Yes, exactly. So you've got the roots that are able to really dig deep, sandy soils. So pests don't really like that. They can't move very much. But one thing that's really unique about Eastern Washington compared to Western Washington, as we were kind of saying, you can't grow grapes out here. They get, 300 days of sunshine. They get only 6 to 8 inches of rain per year. Very beautiful weather. It's very cold in the winter, very continental, and hot summers, cold winters. But that's what makes it great for growing grapes. And it's the Cascade rain shadow, this massive mountains that are stopping any rainfall from really getting over them. So all of that heat accumulation, sunshine, long summer days, as you're here in Seattle, you can see we're not getting dark out until 10 p.m. at night, right?
Yes.
So they have long hours of getting ripe. But then we have a massive diurnal shift as well. So the difference from the highest point in the day to the lowest point at night in temperature, it could be 90, 95, 100 degrees during the day, and it could drop down to 60, 65 at night. So it's a massive shift. It's 30 to 40 degrees. And that's really what helps us here make quality grape growing possible, because you have ripeness, but you have structure. So you're not letting those vines sit out there and get overly ripe, overly sweet, not enough structure to hold it up. And that's why we're able to produce wines that have that backbone, but also that ripeness. So we like to say kind of old world and new world, although we try to avoid, those terms these days. Yeah. But generally speaking, it's kind of like a little bit of a mixture of those two.
So you brought it up, and I'm so glad you did. Although it's not a happy story, we want to talk about the philosophy.
Phylloxera, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Because I
luckily.
think most people don't understand
Oh, sure, yeah.
what happened. So give us a brief history on that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, in the mid 1800s, pretty much, I think it's like I don't know the exact statistics, 70 something, 80% of vineyards in Europe were completely devastated and eradicated from, not eradicated, wrong word, but devastated from this little root louse called phylloxera that likes to nibble on Vitis vinifera. And interestingly enough, they found that American rootstocks that are native to US, so Vitis labrusca, different species, Vitis riparia, whatever it happens to be, they are resistant to these root louses. They can't, the little pests, phylloxera, can't eat the roots. So interestingly, when they found that out, they decided that, okay, well, if they can survive, they survive on the American rootstock, what if we graft our European varieties, the Vitis vinifera, onto the American rootstocks and then plant that in Europe? And that's been one of the most successful, call it inventions, but ideas of the modern wine world is that you can have these disease-resistant rootstocks or pest-resistant rootstocks and still plant your beautiful European Vitis vinifera. Because I will say American hybrid or American native varieties are not the best quality for wine.
Okay.
They're a little funky. Mm-hmm. There's still some of them out there, but most of the time it's going into grape juice, grape jelly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So now in the US,
Like
Concord grapes, exactly.
Yes.
So most of Europe, almost all of it, is going to be planted on rootstocks now because at this point, phylloxera has just taken over. It's going to be everywhere. And it really likes, nice stodgy soils or soils that it can move around in. But sandier soils, it doesn't like. So there's some parts of the U.S. that do need to be on rootstock as well, because if we're going to grow those European varieties here, we need to make sure that they're resistant. But in Washington, it's unique because we have these sandy soils. They can't move around. So there's, in Australia as well, it's kind of similar. They have these soils that they don't like, or the phylloxera's never gotten there. And therefore are resistant. So a lot more of that here in Washington, which inside, the quality from either or is great. It's not like you're going to end up with massively different. It's just that we have the ability to have these really old vines that produce very concentrated and beautiful grapes. And that's one of the benefits for sure. And it's less costly. Don't have to pay to graft anything.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of the industry standard, at least outside. And as you said, you might 100% think about doing that with your own vines. Yes. Let's talk about, I didn't wait, sorry.
No, please.
This is the Riesling.
Yes, this is our Eroica Riesling. So Eroica.
Delicious.
Which is a fun name. I think that when people think Chateau Ste. Michelle, a lot of time what they think is Riesling.
Right.
This was their first experience of a domestic Riesling, if not Riesling in general. And this was a wonderful partnership, actually. We're actually in our Eroica room right now. We have this lovely piece of music on the wall behind us. It was a partnership that started in the 90s, 1999, with Dr. Lozin, which is also one of the best. It was a little logo on the back here. He is, an incredible winemaker from the Mosel in Germany. Has had his family has hundreds of years of experience with Riesling winemaking in Germany. And he is a huge proponent of American wines. He's out there all the time. He's got projects in Oregon and Washington and wherever else. And he had heard about what we were doing up here in Washington with Riesling. We right now are the largest premium producer of Riesling in the world. We make the most Riesling compared to anywhere else in the world from a single producer of
I was going to say,
Riesling.
even Germany, right?
Even Germany,
but a single producer.
Exactly, single producer, exactly. And so he actually came to us in the 90s. He was introduced by a friend and was just fell in love with Chateau Ste. Michelle, what we were doing here, and really wanted to help us hone our Riesling, which we were doing a lot of at the time, but he was like, I want to get in on this. I want to also help out. So since 1999, we've been making Eroica Riesling, which stands for, it means hero in Greek, which is, it's kind of our hero variety of Washington. It's a hero variety in Germany. And it's Beethoven's Third Symphony, so a little German tie-in.
Fun.
Heroic. If you've ever heard this piece of music, it's very powerful. And that's what Riesling was to him and to us. So
I feel like we should have it in the
yeah, I know. We should put it in the background. Exactly. a little intro music.
Now the label
Yeah.
is a little bit different. Like I don't see Chateau Saint Michel on the front of the label. It's
Correct.
obviously on the back because we're
Mhm.
looking at it with
Yes.
Dr. Riesling. What was the branding decision on that?
Good question. I think that we wanted to make sure that we have a lot of Rieslings in our portfolio.
Sure.
We make a dry Riesling, a sweet Riesling, an off dry. We make everything from, we make a Tongasmic Wine style, which is the TBA German style. We make Spätlese styles. I mean, we make all of the gambit. And a lot of people are familiar with Chateau Saint Michel Riesling, but we wanted to make sure that people understood that this was something else.
Something different.
When you taste
Elevated, maybe?
a little more premium, a little
Okay.
bit more elevated, very select vineyard sourcing for it as well. And Ernie actually comes out twice a year, if not more, to do the blending with us, to taste the wines, to walk the vineyards, all of that. I've actually got to be in a session with him, and it's so cool. He's got this great like Einstein hair.
I was picturing
He's
Einstein.
so German, and I love it. But he knows, he's so attuned to Riesling. And so he'll be given, a couple different glasses. And, I noticed that every single glass he was picking was either from the same vineyard or same area. And he was like, this is for Roca, this is for this. And so he
Very
knows what he
discerning.
wants. Yeah, he's very discerning. So Roca it's a totally different style from Chateau Saint Michel. So really it's about separating it out just so that people are familiar with what we do at Chateau Saint Michel. But if you want to try a different style of Riesling, this is a different area.
I think that's amazing. So the price difference is also, there's a price
Yeah,
difference.
there will be a price difference. A Roca generally sits around the $20 range.
Still very reasonable.
Very reasonable. This is probably, if you're looking for a domestic Riesling, I mean, this is your go-to for a premium Riesling on your by the glass list or whatever it happens to be. Our Columbia Valley Rieslings that are found pretty much everywhere, those are in the lower price point, 15 or less. What's interesting about that though, this little, insider knowledge here is that anything that just doesn't make the cut for a Roca, even if it just barely doesn't make the cut, it will go into our CB Columbia Valley Riesling.
Okay.
So you're getting very, very good quality still. And,
Yeah.
one of your three questions for this is about like supply and demand. And I think that
Production. Yes.
production, I think people don't realize we have so much space to work with in Washington, whereas some of our other states in the U.S. are pretty much planted out.
Yeah.
We have like 11 million acres of untouched land in the Columbia Valley. We only have about 60,000 acres planted, which is only 15,000 more than Napa.
Huh.
All of Napa Valley is about 45,000 acres. So we are that's all we have is basically a little bit more than Napa in all of Washington. So we have so much room to play.
Yeah.
And it also means that our grapes are being planted in a place that we want them to be.
Deliberately.
It's deliberate.
Yeah.
It's not just so that we can meet demand.
Yeah.
It's like we know this is where Riesling's going to grow well. We're going to plant here. We have so much, room to play with that.
I find it interesting, and I'm making the assumption that the Riesling grapes are like next to Cab Francs, Cab Franc, or whatever.
Yeah.
grapes, right?
It's funny you mentioned that. We have had several groups of MW students, Master of Wine students, who come here to Seattle to do studies or whatever it happens to be, and we've hosted them. And one of their practice exam questions was exactly that. Where in the world can you find Riesling and Cabernet successfully growing next to each other? They always have to ask us because there's not many other places in the world where you will find Riesling and Cabernet growing in the same region. Now, I will say, it's not necessarily the same exact areas in Washington because, like I said, we have a lot of room to play.
Sure.
It's a big state. So we're growing most of our Riesling either towards the Cascades in Yakima, where it's a little bit cooler or higher elevation, closer to the mountain range, or further north. So we sit pretty far north. We're about 46, 47 degrees latitude. So we're looking at north, around 47, 48 degrees, where we're actually sourcing more of our Riesling from like Asian lakes, ABA and such.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, can people get Eroica outside of the tasting room?
You can, yeah, absolutely. The place where I go the first to look for it would be like a specialty wine shop, whether that's, your Total Wines or Bedloes or things that are specifically selling wine. They will usually carry this over just your regular retail store. So I would look into that, but yeah, you'll be able to find out. Okay. Yeah.
I also noted I'm going to be taking a cruise later, and you guys are on the cruise ship.
We are, yeah. We're on many cruise ships.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
We don't have a partnership anymore, but we used to with Holland America.
Mhm.
And that's, we still have wines with them, but we had a partnership where we actually hosted like a whole blend session
Oh, fun.
on the ships, because there's always fun activities on this.
Yeah.
So I actually got to go on a cruise and host people on that.
Cool.
Yes. I'm so glad I got to that. At least
Good
once.
job.
I know.
The only job that's better is mine.
I would agree.
All right, so that's the Riesling, and you were so kind. I will chug this later.
Oh, please.
But we also have a red. So tell me, cheers. Tell me about the red.
So this is our artist series. Artist series, we have been making this for decades at this point. Our artist series label was envisioned by kind of what we were talking about, the science and art of winemaking.
Right.
It goes into the science and art of making art. And we decided to start partnering with different artists that were local to Seattle and showcase their wine or their art on our labels, and also working with them kind of in the lead up to that, whether or not the piece was designed for the bottle or it was just something inspired by it.
Mm-hmm.
But we work very closely with the artists to say, okay, this is kind of what this vintage was giving us. This is what, the vibes were of this year. How can we kind of put that into a piece of artwork? So it's a great collaboration to do something with our local artists, support our local artists, as we're from Washington as well. So there will be a different piece of art on every vintage, every year that we make artist series.
Well, you just want to keep the bottle.
Exactly. Well, most people do. They buy, we usually, like with this artist here, Junko Yamamoto, we have 3 different pieces of art from her that are on the different labels. You can buy a box set, and it's just this beautiful, gorgeous set of different art. So we've had, I think our first wine ever was with Chihuly, which is the glass maker that's local to Seattle. It's very famous. So it's kind of taken off since then. And this is amongst some of the first wine that we blend every single year. So it's always very, very hand selected by our winemakers. It's usually, or I want to say 100% of the time, always a Bordeaux blend.
Okay.
And that's something that,
You say Bordeaux blend. What do
Yeah.
you mean by that? Because a lot of people know Bordeaux is a region in France, but they don't know specifically the varietals. So
Yeah.
tell me what that means.
yeah, so Bordeaux blend,
I love having
From
a
Bordeaux,
Bordeaux
France.
By the way. I feel like I could ask you many questions.
that's what I love to do. It's why I'm here. Bordeaux is a region in France that is well known for making blends of wine from typically 5 varieties. So Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Malbec, Petit Verdot, and Cabernet Franc.
Okay.
So typically it's going to be a blend of those 5 grapes, which is always really funny because a lot of people who drink Bordeaux don't realize that a lot of times they're drinking mostly Merlot, and people say they don't like Merlot, but they really do.
Merlot's delicious.
We love Merlot. Never knock it. And so we realized kind of where we are in Washington, and I mentioned kind of the old world, new world vibes of what we've got going on here, allowed us to grow Bordeaux varieties exceptionally well here because we have those long ripening days. We're able to kind of keep that backbone. So Bordeaux style is a little bit more similar to us than maybe it is down in California. So we have this beautiful backbone here. This one specifically, if I can just pull it off the back, is 46 Merlot, 44 Cab, Cabernet Sauvignon, 9% Malbec, and 1% Cabernet Franc. Everyone loves that.
So for the
1% Cabernet Franc.
I would say the blenders are
So important. They're so important. Yeah. And so the blend will be different every single vintage. It's never the same. It's really, what is this vintage giving to us? This was 2020. The next vintage will be different, and so on and so forth. So, this is just something that's a very fun special release every single year.
And it's delicious.
And it's delicious. I'm glad you think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very fun. So some of the favorite things that our winemakers get to play around with every year, and the ageability too. And I think that that's really key for us, is that yes, you can go and buy Chateau Ste. Michelle Columbia Valley, at the store for $10. But you can also get high premium quality wines out of Washington too, that are going to be low production, more winemaking focused, and that the winemakers are able to select just the best of the best grapes from that vintage.
Right. And people can find these also at
Sometimes
distribution.
Yeah, so you can find sometimes these in specialty bottle shops or in different on-premise restaurants.
Okay.
But we're, I think, transitioning this to be more direct-to-consumer. So to find this, it would be either here at the Chateau, or you would find it online at our site as well.
Perfect. Great segue. Let's talk about the wine club and how people that don't live in Washington, and specifically, I always felt like when I joined wine clubs, if I didn't live in that area, I was like, well, half of my benefits are gone.
Yeah,
right.
right.
So tell us about your wine club and the benefits, especially for out-of-towners.
Yes,
Out-of-staters.
absolutely. So, and that's kind of one of the keys is that there are wines that we make here, and you might have seen as we came in, there's a whole wall of wine that is direct to consumer only. So we have the ability, being Washington's largest winery, to source really cool, unique grape varieties, or make really intricate, cool blends, or, we have a little bit of this one really special thing where it's not enough to go into something else, but we're going to make our own special wine for it. And those are the kind of ones that are going to go into our club fulfillment.
So like a small batch.
Small batch, lots of small batch. You're not going to either fund it again, or it'll only be available for people as part of our club. And so that's kind of one of the biggest, I think, special parts about our club, is that you get to taste Chateau Ste. Michelle winemaking and winemakers, and they really are a huge part of this. I mean, we haven't even talked about our winemaking team yet, but they're phenomenal, and they are so passionate about what they do, and the club wines are their favorite things to make.
I bet.
Because, they make the same things every year, and they're trying to make
They're like
certain
unicorns.
things consistent, but these are, they're unicorn wines. And so we have pretty large wineries, but we have reserve wineries inside of those. So smaller wineries where we get to play around and work with concrete and amphora and different types of oak, and, spend more money on it. So they love to play around, and that's why our direct-to-consumer club wines are so unique and special. So that's definitely one of the biggest draws for most people. Also, that if you are in state, there's the ability to have, free tastings when you come in. You can bring people with you. We have our concert series that we have every summer, which is super fun.
Yeah.
And you get early access to things like that. So there's definitely a lot of benefits to it. And coming to Chateau Ste. Michelle in the summertime, you can't beat it. And this is the place to be if you are living in, down south or anywhere, honestly, anywhere in the States in the summer where it's humid and hot, and you want to come out to where it's like perfect temperature and dry, you got to come out here.
So you brought up the team. That's a great thing. Let's talk about the team, because I'll be honest, this is like the start of my discussions with wine experts. And so the winemakers that I've talked to are usually one, maybe co-winemakers, right? How many winemakers does Chateau Ste. Michelle have approximately?
How many winemakers do we have? Okay, so just for Chateau Ste. Michelle?
Yeah, just do that.
Okay, just for Chateau Ste. Michelle. Well, one thing I do love about actually our whole company is that we're probably about 50-50 female and male winemakers.
Oh, that's awesome.
Our VP of winemaking is Katie Nelson, who's also on the little back label there. And she is incredible. She's been around literally since when she's been making wine since the 90s, and now there was only 200 wineries at the time, and now we're over 1,000 wineries in Washington, which is really cool because there's been so many winemakers that have come through the chateau and then started their own business.
Yeah. So under her tutelage.
Under all of our incredible past winemakers. So it's called Chateau Ste. Michelle University.
That's awesome.
Training and spitting them out. So we've got Katie. Literally. I know, I should have offered you a spit cup, but
I rarely do. I need one. Thank you.
So Katie is our VP. We also have under her Brian Mackey, who is our red wine maker. And then we have Taylor Butterfield. She is our white wine maker. And then both of them each have a couple of winemakers under them as well. So they're about 6 or 7 total. And that includes enologists and things like that.
So you open the door. So what else besides Chateau St. Michel?
Yeah, I know. I think a lot of people forget that it's not just one winery, because we actually have the umbrella of St. Michel Wine Estates as is our umbrella company, and it happens to have the name St. Michel in it, so people get confused and think it's just one part of one company. But we have wineries now in the Pacific. We're basically a Pacific Northwest wine company, really championing Washington and Oregon. So in Washington, we have other wineries that you should be able to find in stores, such as 14 Hands or Columbia Crest. And then we also have our premium luxury Washington that you'll probably mostly find just in restaurants or specialty wine shops. North Star, which is incredible in Merlot. And then Spring Valley Vineyards, which is Walla Walla Fruit, state fruit, incredible wines. Our wine for their cake is incredible, Merlot at North Star. And then we have a bunch of kind of other option wines out there that aren't necessarily, kind of their own winery, but we have Liquid Light, which is one of our kind of lighter, less alcohol wine styles. So different intrinsic, another fun wine with a fun label. So, they get to play around a bit. And then outside of Washington, we have Oregon, which has been so much fun to be a part of. The Oregon team is fantastic. We started with ERAF back in 2006. That's when we purchased ERAF. From Dick Erath, who unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago, but he was amongst the first pioneers in Oregon back since the mid 60s. And so Erath is probably, I think, the number one selling Oregon Pinot Noir. And then just 2 years ago, we also purchased A to Z Wineworks, which also had Rex Hill. Rex Hill is more of the premium side of A to Z, and then A to Z is your everyday. So lots of, in Washington, we don't have that many Pinot Noirs. So it's great to have Oregon part of our portfolio, and to be able to taste like the Chardonnays and the Pinot Gris and all of that are so differentiated. Even though everyone thinks, oh, they're so close. They're really not. Winemaking in Oregon is a whole nother ballgame compared to Washington.
What's the most unique varietal that you guys have? I know I shared a great bottle of yours the other night of Nubed.
Nice.
Okay.
Oh, gosh. We have direct to consumer. So if you're, a club member, you get to try it. We have things like El Bote. We have Gruner Veltliner. We have Rousson and Marsanne. So lots of Rhone varieties. If you haven't tried Syrah from Washington, you're missing out.
Agreed.
Merlot, Syrah, Bordeaux, Rhone.
Premium.
Absolutely.
Premium.
Yeah, very premium. So we've got Grenache. We've got a very weird variety that I've never really heard of until I started working here called Counoise, which is another Rhone variety blender wine. So and it's delicious, When people come in wanting Pinot Noir, that's what we pour them because it's delicious. But it's lighter bodied, so very cool stuff, yeah.
As a wine educator, what do you tell? Actually, my cousin asked me to ask this question.
Okay.
So thank you. As a wine novice, what questions should wine analysts ask when they're tasting wine? Which you don't know what you don't know, right?
Absolutely.
So if you're going to a winery or if you're trying to decide what wine to buy for the night with your dinner, what questions should you be asking?
I really liked
one question.
I liked this question a lot because it got me thinking about the balance between kind of what the wine industry is struggling with right now is we have kind of, people think we're too prestigious, too,
snobby. That's why I have snobby, right? Don't be
I know.
assist.
I know. And so we can get geeky about it, but we need to recognize that there is a level of knowledge out there that is not going to be there. And so I go back to when I first was living or learning about wine. Like I said, I grew up with parents who drank Chardonnay, Cabernet exclusively. That's all they ever got, right? So I grew up thinking Chardonnay, Cabernet were a style of wine. Yeah. Sure. And my biggest aha moment was when I was sitting in this 700-person wine class and I learned that Chardonnay is actually the grapes themselves from the Chardonnay vine plant, and then that's a totally different vine than Cabernet or Syrah or Sauvignon Blanc. And I was like, and I kind of liken it to apple varieties, right? Like, we always are at the store saying, oh, I like Fuji or I like Honeycrisp or Granny Smith. And so people don't, I try to help with make that analogy. It's like, okay, there are different varieties. And the thing that I think is probably just that first barrier for people, and this can kind of help get them through that, and that I've noticed with my friends, is they don't understand the varieties, right? So there's, you ask for a white wine, who cares what's in it, right? And that's totally fine. If you just like any white wine, go for it. If you want to learn a little bit more about what your preferences are, if you order that house white from wherever it is, ask them what variety it is. Just ask them that question. If you don't understand what variety is, think of the apples again. But ask what variety it is. It could be Chardonnay, it could be Sauvignon Blanc, and just kind of keep a mental checklist of every time you've liked a wine and you look at the label and it'll tell you, this is a Riesling. That is the variety. It can get a little confusing when you learn about different countries. But generally speaking, if you ask someone at the restaurant, and even if it's an international thing, they'll be able to tell you what kind of variety is in it. So keep them.
Should be.
Or they should be. Whole should.
Grapes.
Grapes are in. White grapes. But I think just kind of keeping a mental checklist of variety. Don't need to go beyond that. How much oak is in it? How much time does it spend on the leaf? Whatever.
Just figure out the variety.
Just figure out the variety. Generally speaking, the variety stylistically is going to be similar. That's going to be the biggest portion of why it tastes the way it does. It's the grape itself. Right. My brother has recently realized he really likes Merlot, which I'm like, so he's kind of kept that mental checklist, and now when he goes to a restaurant, he can look down the list and he sees a Merlot, and I think the next step after that is maybe where it's from or different winemaking techniques. But the biggest thing I can say is just be curious about what the variety is. If you want to know more, if you just want to order a white wine, fine. But
so that's one question is what variety or varietal. Those words are
kind of interchangeable. Yeah, I think there is
some nuance.
I think there's a nuance to it, but generally speaking, we use.
I've got a winemaker tell me same thing.
Yeah, basically. At this point,
unless you really care.
If I were to say, you said that wrong, then that's exactly what we don't want to do in this industry.
Exactly.
We don't want to push people away.
That's it.
And so that's, and then after that, I mean, just be open. I think that if you love Sauvignon Blanc and someone says, hey, maybe like a Riesling, they're both aromatic varieties, and immediately saying, oh, I don't want this, it's going to be sweet. Just let someone try it on it. You don't have to, we are so accommodating in this industry to pour you a little sip of anything that you want. We want you to find what we love. That's the whole point. Is we want you to really enjoy that glass. Why would we ever want to pour this? You didn't like. So that's key, I think. If you really want to find the wines you like, it's just pay attention to the variety and then just kind of keep trying them and learning more about that and see how it goes. But no wrong answer. Don't let anyone ever tell you that you should or shouldn't like something.
Or feel bad about so many people I'm so sorry. I'm like,
what's
wrong with that?
That's totally fine.
That's what your palate is asking for.
Exactly.
Give it.
Don't yuck someone's yum,
That's right. Final question.
Sure. Could talk all day.
No, I try to keep it to 1 and 2 glasses.
That's your gauge, is the amount of wine you've gotten through.
I love that. Right? Yeah. When you see Chateau Saint Michel on the shelf or on the menu, what's your first thought? Yay!
Oh, yeah. I get to give my
part of that. Yeah. Well, I mean, you have to feel.
No, it's really exciting because growing up in California and I've lived in a lot of states now, Texas, New York, Florida, wherever. It's all about California. And I love my home state, don't get me wrong. But it is really exciting when you recognize that someone else out there either saw the quality in the name, because a lot of people actually don't even know that Chateau Ste. Michel is in Washington, which is, you know what, if you like the wine,
it's the Chateau part.
People like the name Chateau. That too. but just like knowing that there's buyers out there who are excited about Washington and want to showcase Washington on their label or on their list, I think is really exciting for me. And also when I get to go out and whenever I'm in the market training distributors or out with buyers, they love to learn about Washington because we're not California coming in and telling them another California story because they're very familiar with that category. And so Washington has so much room for growth, Oregon as well. So Pacific Northwest, I'm just excited ever to see it on the list and get people excited about it.
If you're not sure where it's from, you can look usually at the front label.
Yeah.
It's got the location, but always in the back.
Check out the back. Yep.
Has the address.
If you like the label, great. Pick it up off the shelf, but turn it around. See where it's from. Learn a little bit more about that.
Well, and I try to tell people, don't just walk into a wine store not knowing an idea of what you want to get before you go there. Because marketing is really strong. So if you're thinking about Washington, well, do some research. Chateau St. Michel's will be on the top of your list. And they have tons of distribution in all states.
All 50 states.
All 50,
100 countries.
Yeah. And 100 countries.
Pretty cool.
I said that was my last question. I lied. I'm sorry, but where's your next trip to? Do you know?
Oh, my next trip? Well, actually, I think it's just down to Oregon next month, which is exciting because our winemakers are getting together. They have an annual winemaker conference, and I love it because our winemakers, many of them have worked outside of the States, but they've focused on Oregon and Washington so much that they've asked me to come in and do just like kind of a fun training where they have to just learn about something. Yeah. So I don't know what we're doing yet, but going on there for that.
I want to invite you to my party. So answer all the questions that I might have.
Exactly. After that, though, I'm going to Germany and then to Italy this September. So gonna get out to the vineyards for sure.
Awesome. Okay, I know you talked about if you're interested, ask variety of varietal, whatever term, if you want to sound a little higher class.
Say what grapes are in this, who cares?
What grapes was this wine made out of? What other advice would you offer to a beginner in the wine loving spectrum, right?
I think that it can feel a little scary at first to talk to other people that are in the wine industry.
Intimidating.
It's intimidating, but I think the second you can cross that bridge and just ask, what is the bartender or your server, whoever it happens to be, the second you show interest in wine, they're going to give interest back. Yeah. Trust me. We love when people want to get into the wine world. Yeah. So I would just say, ask questions of your sommelier, ask questions of your retail shop owner. They, I'm sure, could talk your ear off and they'll tell you anything you want to know. So if you are wanting to get into it, find that. And then, when I've moved a lot at this point, but I always try when I move to find a wine community. And so I have people I taste with on a regular basis. And I also bring funky wines, literally just talking to people, right? Like luckily I'm in the industry, so I can, whenever I'm with distributors, I'll say, hey, anyone know of a tasting group, but I would recommend just, talk to the server or someone that, is in the wine industry and say, hey, I'm really into this stuff. What do you think about it? How should I go about it? And everyone's going to have a different answer too, but that'll help get you over that hump. Mm-hmm. And then they might open that world of wine to you and you'll be able to meet more people in your neighborhood who are in the industry who are interested in wine. There are so many people I taste with that are just interested in wine in general, and they're not in the industry. I mean, they just fell in love with it and want to continue to drink and talk about it. So,
well, I've heard this before, and I do believe it. Once you start learning about wine, once you have an interest, you're ravenous, right? But there's so much information, and there's so many facets.
The more you learn, the less you realize
so don't be intimidated because even wine experts like Lauren is learning.
I am stumped all the time with questions people give me. But the biggest thing is, it's a great question. I want to go look into that. And now you have, strategy, something I always strive for. So it makes it really fun. You can never, because no vintage is the same. No region is the same. Bordeaux from 50 years ago is not the Bordeaux of today. Washington is not the same. I mean, heck, we barely have anyone vineyards 50 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's always changing.
So, hey, everybody, thanks for joining us. Lauren, thank you
For
so
having me.
much. Cheers to you.
This was so
And
fun.
to everything that you do. Hey, everybody, I'm Norma. This is Just the Sip. Join me next month for our next interview. And, well, I don't know if it's going to be an interview, but it probably will be, for our next episode. And cheers.
Cheers.